Now we're gonna go to whether, you start kind of getting a little bigger, and you're a bigger company, or you're just a freelancer and you have that nice thing where like you're not having to pay so many licenses and you can afford to use this. But what I recommend for Archicad tech stack number 3, and then again mainly for business, again assuming that you have an Archicad license, a graphics of Beam Cloud, something that I found very useful is model port, because for our presentations you really need to have sometimes better models, and let's face it, like Archicad does not have great objects, especially when it comes to furniture. So I've seen people getting help from SketchUp, so they bring models from SketchUp. But I think that when it comes to quality products, Enscape gives you a very good starting quality of products that you can use as far as furniture goes, and at the same time works as a rendering engine. But you also have model port that I feel like it's great because you can download from Beam Object, which is free, great assets, and then you can really clean them up, and at the same time gives you the ability, model port gives you the ability to, if you have any SketchUp files, if you have any 3ds Max files, or any other files that are not compatible with Archicad, model port will make those compatible, and you can clean those up and bring the texture maps and everything, and now you have some nice furniture that you can add to your Archicad model. So I found these licenses useful for bringing, if you are the kind of person or the company that actually needs to include a lot of nice furniture or things like that for your client. I think that's useful. Enscape, I think it's very useful, especially now that it has the live sync with Archicad. It's very easy to use, it's very user friendly, and you can get great renderings out of it. And then Beam Object, which doesn't cost you any money, you just create your account and you can just download great assets that are actually based on the manufacturer with the right specifications from there. Then we will go again to our rendering, which is now we can include Lumion here. Now here you can always choose between, Twinmotion, Lumion, DeFi have become like let's call it the market, the big players here. I would still go with DeFi Pro, to be honest, just because for the output you get along with the cost of the license, I think it's a no-brainer to pay $360 a year for a very good rendering engine. Whereas Twinmotion would be more expensive and Lumion would be definitely more expensive. Even though they're both great, they have both licensed with Archicad, I do still feel like for the price that you're paying, I think DeFi is still the better option. Here's where I think things start getting interesting, because now you have these new AI tools that are Prom AI, LookX, and they're specifically targeted for architects and to use AI, and they're enhancers, and they can come up with really cool renderings with just like a few prompts and clicks. So here I would recommend, just for the sake of it, I would recommend this one here, LookXI, which is like $200 annually. And I would also recommend the Crea AI, the Pro plan, which is $336. This is just in case that you want to go towards like animations and you want to create some videos that are pretty easy. So once you have your rendering, you put it on Crea AI or LookX, and you can create some pretty compelling 10-second, 15-second clips of that animation on that rendering that would normally take more time if you do it on DeFi or something, but it just takes like a prompt and a click. So depending again who's your client and where your normally type of work is, I will do that too. Just a quick thing here, let me make sure, I think. So yeah, and then lastly, here's where I would recommend, besides here we're gonna go with the core version of it, not the basics anymore. We're gonna go with the core, which gives you more capabilities and the ability to work together. Along with that, normally the business license for now that you're not an individual, now you have business license. Now this is gonna go up to $1,000 annually, and I would recommend to get the license of upcodes, at least the essential one, that will come with $468 a year. I believe this one here is very useful if you are an architect and you have like already a small studio, and you're always kind of going through permitting process, plan check comments, and you need that like upgrade to make it easier for people to kind of have something digital to kind of look at the codes. I think upcodes is a great tool, especially here in the United States. And with that being said, we're gonna assume that we are using Beam Cloud, of course. We're gonna assume that we're using model port, Enscape, Beam Objects. Here I'm gonna assume that I'm using the Crea AI, ChatGPT, LookX, Bluebeam Core, the Adobe Suites and Opcode's Essentials, and that comes to a total of $7,000 compared to stack number 2. So the difference between Archicad tech stack number 3 and number 2 is like a little bit more than $1,000. That's, you know, this is a significant amount, and a lot of that is because you are adding the licenses for these part here. Now you are adding like business licenses, and that's why the cost really goes up that much. Now finally, we're gonna go to our premium version, and this is mainly of the tech stack for Archicad. So if you're an Archicad user and you really want to learn about the best tech stacks that you can use, this is number 4, and this is the premium version. I call it premium because this is specifically if you have like a visualization studio working there that are dedicated for architects. So you have like or specialists in the company that are just doing the visualizations and animations. This is probably going to be the tech stack for you. So with that being said, again, we're assuming that you're using Archicad, Beam Cloud. We're gonna keep Enscape and Model Port and Beam Objects here. I think that's the best workflow. You can always decide not to use this. Now for this one here specifically, I think it has become a little bit more, how do I say this? Has become a little bit more compelling here now that it has Enscape Impact, because Enscape Impact will allow you to analyze everything that is like the solar and like the energy use, and it's pretty, I think it's pretty compelling to use that as a presentation for a client if that's the projects that you're in. And if you're not never kind of doing something that like energy analysis or anything like that, then probably Impact is not for you. But I'm recently starting to try it just to see what's the interest out there with the clients. Along with that, we're gonna be also, now you have a Unreal Engine. I think Unreal Engine, especially in the archivist world, has become really popular. The reason why a lot of the architects don't use it is the same reason why a lot of architecture fields don't use 3ds Max or V-Ray or Corona, is because generally speaking, it's a lot, the curve of learning is more difficult, and when you don't have somebody full-time specializing in that, it's very hard to kind of get familiar with, especially in Unreal Engine, that even though it's an amazing tool and you can compare it with Twinmotion, they're in the same company, Unreal Engine doesn't necessarily have the same library done there. You have to bring libraries in, and that could be a little bit technical to use. So the curve for learning Unreal Engine, it's definitely steeper, but you can get great results if you know how to use it. We're gonna keep the same ones here. Again, here I would recommend the Pro version, just because Creo AI, the great thing about it is that it gives you the opportunity, it's like a broker, it gives you the opportunity to use certain models. So meaning, like for instance, if I'm using video, you can use Clean AI, and you have another 5 more models that you can use that are technically, you can pay those for like on itself, but the great thing is a broker, so you can choose which one to use, and the same for images. For instance, in Korea, there's you can use flux images, like flux technology. You can also use a few of that are ideograms. So Korea is great to kind of have a little bit of everything. So I would recommend that one. ChatGPT, of course. Here, what I would recommend, especially if you have a visualization studio, a lot of ArchViz companies are using something that is like Magnifique or Topaz Labs, something that enhances images, that can upscale images, especially when you use AI. A lot of them still work like Stable Diffusion, still work in small pixels, in like a smaller format, you know, pixel quantity. So an enhancer is definitely useful. And then for animations or videos, a lot of people use Adobe Premiere, but something that has become really popular is the DaVinci Resolve, and I think that's what in the ArchViz world a lot of the people tend to prefer going to the DaVinci Resolve. And then finally, here's where you will have the more specialized to visualizers. I have to kind of keep Rhino and SketchUp a little bit out of this, because I really wanted to kind of make it about Archicad and what it would be to just what happens if you're just a company that is just trying to use Archicad and then with tools that can complement it, rather than the big studios that use Revit and SketchUp or Revit and Rhino. I just kind of try to kind of do these ones specifically just if you're not using it. So I'm actually including them right now, but this is just in the case that you have a visualization team. Chances are that you're actually using 3ds Max. And again, kind of going back to this, remember, this is like the best tech stack for the premium companies. So if you have a visualization studio, probably the best thing that you want to do is try to use that 3ds Max along with Corona, because it's just easier to use, or you can complement it with V-Ray if you want to. They are really similar in costs. And along with that, if you have somebody more specialized in AI, a lot of the companies are using Comfy UI or Stable Diffusion, and when you use those, as of right now, like you use it from your desktop, it's free. It does take a lot of storage, and your computer, of course, have to have good GPUs to use it. So, but again, you're using it from your computer, it's free. You just have to. It's just a little difficult to install, and it requires some technical things and models to bring in. So it's not necessarily something that is too scalable right now, but you're definitely gonna be wanting to use 3ds Max and Corona. I think that's probably the best one, along with maybe Comfy UI or Stable Diffusion for the post-production. And I think that's it. I mean, it's a big list, but here I'm assuming that you're gonna do Archicad, BeamCloud. You're gonna use these 2 licenses here along with Impact. So that's $820 for both Enscape and Enscape Impact, which doesn't just give you the real-time animations and the renderings, the renderings, but it also gives you the energy analysis. Again, this is not really something you need to include, but I'm just gonna include both licenses as of right now in there. I'm gonna include the DeFi teams, even though it's a lot more expensive, but still, I think for the value, you still gonna get that. Now, Unreal Engine is free as of this moment. I think it might actually cost money if you're like a big company, then you might actually have to pay something. But where it's at, it's really like you're gonna probably, if you're a big studio, you're probably gonna end up buying libraries from Unreal Engine. There's a lot of libraries that are free, but if you're an artist studio and serious about it, you're probably gonna start looking for high assets that are most likely you're gonna pay for it. But I do think that the cost of it, it's great, but I think specifically for architecture firms, I wouldn't recommend Unreal Engine necessarily. I think you're an architecture studio and you're dedicated this full-time, probably yes. But for an architecture studio, I would still recommend DeFi, just because I still have the better cost output comparison for all the 4. For here, I would recommend Cree AI, the Pro version, along with ChatGPT. Here I would recommend the actual Pro version, the professional, because it comes with the AI feature that does really speed the process of doing code analysis, along with the complete license, business license here. And here I will include the Photo AI, which is like $200. And here the $295 of DaVinci. Now the great thing about these 2, Topaz Labs and DaVinci, is like you only pay once, and then you only pay again when you want to upgrade, and I don't think you even have to pay the full amount either. So that's the great thing about these ones. Now the good one, the big daddy here, is 3ds Max, which is $1,945. That's what I would pick out of the 3, but still that's a lot of money to pay. So that's why if you have like a visualization studio, you're probably gonna give this license to only 1 or 2 people, along with the Corona renderer, which is $514, and we're not gonna put any price for that. So the cost of this premium stack is $11,052, which seems like a lot of money, but you have to understand that some of these tools are only paid once. For instance, you have the Topaz Labs, you have the DaVinci that is only paid once. A lot of these other ones are unfortunately subscription based. And also to understanding that you're not gonna give these to every person in your office, right? Like some people will really specialize in 3ds Max and Corona, so they would just be getting those licenses, and some other people will be getting only the Archicad and Enscape. So some people would just probably be getting this, and some other people would just getting this last end of the image, and then somewhere along the middle, people will be getting